Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a mind-bending mathematical reality that I promise is going to completely change how you look at the physical world around you. We're going to explore a really fascinating narrative called the idiot cartographies. It's essentially a story that takes a very real-world mathematical concept, fractal geometry, and pushes it to its absolute reality-breaking limits.
So, let's just start with a question. How long is a coastline? It sounds like a total no-brainer, right? You just grab a map, trace the edge, and boom, you have your answer. But the truth is, this is a massive mathematical trap. Until you actually get out there and try to measure it, you don't realize that the answer depends entirely on the person measuring it, and more importantly, the tool they're using.
Look at this data from our source material regarding the fictional town of Eschara. They had three completely different official measurements for their coast. Back in 1847, surveyors clocked it at 16 kilometers. Cut to 1902, and naval charts say it's 31 kilometers. Fast forward to 1987, and satellite imaging is claiming it's 58 kilometers. And here's the craziest part of the whole thing. Absolutely none of these measurements were wrong. The coastline kept growing simply because the tools the surveyors were using kept getting finer and finer.
And that right there is the heart of what mathematicians call the coastline paradox. In the story, a young boy named Petre Sulm figures this out while he's measuring a stretch of rocks for his surveyor father. He measures the rocks with a wheel, then he tries a meter stick, and finally he uses a 30-centimeter ruler. And guess what? With every smaller tool, he captures more of those tiny nooks and crannies. The distance just keeps jumping. As Petre realizes with total horror, it doesn't converge. The smaller your ruler, the longer the distance becomes, infinitely.
Moving right along to part 1, the architecture of roughness. Let's see how this simple childhood realization blows up into a lifelong obsession.
Fast forward a bit, and an adult Petre Sulm has spent 17 years, 17, secretly mapping those exact same streets of Eschara. He maps them at finer and finer resolutions. He starts with a wheel, then moves to a stick, and eventually he's literally crawling on his hands and knees with a tiny ruler, tracing every single cobblestone and crack. He's not making mistakes here. He's discovering that the city is actually generating new length depending on how closely he looks at it.
Now this all comes to a head when Petre stumbles upon a mysterious map shop run by a cartographer named Voss. Voss is drawing these mesmerizing, endlessly detailed maps, but they have absolutely no scale. When Petre asks her what's going on, she tells him something that beautifully captures her work. She says she isn't drawing a specific physical place. She's drawing the infinite mathematical function that generates coastlines in the first place. She's mapping the universal tendency of matter to produce rough, infinitely crinkled edges.
Now, the actual math behind this is absolutely wild. Voss's grandmother, a cartographer named Voss, used this exact math. It's called the Hausdorff dimension, way back in the 1920s. The Hausdorff dimension proves that a rough edge isn't just a one-dimensional line, but it's also not quite a two-dimensional surface either. It is a fractional dimension. It exists somewhere caught in the middle.
So Voss actually calculated this for the coast of Eschara, and she came up with a mind-bending number, 1.24. That is its fractal dimension. It means the coast occupies exactly 1.24 dimensions. It literally exists in the space between our standard geometric categories. It's not a line. It's a boundary that is so infinitely rough, it is actually beginning to inch its way toward becoming a flat surface.
Which brings us to part 2, the idiot cartography. This is where the tension really kicks into high gear.
Because we've basically got two warring factions here. On one side, we have the smooth world. This is the world of Euclidean geometry, city bureaucracy, building inspectors, and Petre's boss, Voss. They just want straight lines and simple numbers. But on the other side is the rough world, represented by Voss and Petre. And this is the real physical world, which is inherently fractal, jagged, and mathematically infinite.
Voss had the perfect, albeit harsh-sounding, name for what the smooth world does, the idiot cartography. Now, she doesn't mean idiot as in stupid. She's actually using the ancient Greek root idios, meaning private, isolated, or cut off. So, an idiot cartography is a map that forces the infinite physical world into neat, false, integer dimensions just to appease a bureaucracy. It's a map that lies by omission, essentially pretending the world is perfectly smooth.
Voss takes this idea and runs with it, basically arguing that literally everything is fractal, even your own biography. Think about it. You can summarize your childhood in one quick sentence, or you could spend an entire lifetime detailing just a single day of it. We just choose what resolution we want to present to the world. Voss realizes that evasion isn't a lie, it's just a different resolution of the truth.
All right, let's head into part 3, when maps become territory. This is where the theoretical math suddenly becomes a very physical and very dangerous reality.
So this monstrous, unprecedented 31-hour storm slams into Eschara. But it's not just a weather event, it's practically nature's most violent ruler. It washes away all the smooth rock and sand that was hiding the coast's true shape and exposes a deeply rough, infinitely complex matrix of hexagonal basalt columns. The storm literally washes away this smooth illusion.
After the storm clears, we start tracking this terrifying dimensional escalation, where the map actually begins to approach pure reality. Back in the 1920s, the coast was a 1.24, but post-storm, the physical world has gotten rougher. And Voss's obsessive drawing inside her shop is becoming even more complex, pushing the very boundaries of what a piece of paper can actually hold.
Right after the storm, that physical coastline jumps to a dimension of 1.38. It's so hyper-detailed now that Petre realizes he doesn't even need his calipers or measuring tape anymore. His own nervous system begins to resonate with the fractal math of the rocks. He can quite literally feel the infinite roughness with his bare hands.
Meanwhile, inside the shop, Voss's drawing reaches an astounding 1.87. At this point, the map on our wall stops looking like ink on paper. It starts generating this impossible optical illusion of depth. The jagged line is crinkled back on itself so many millions of times that it's actively pulling the viewer's eye into a 3D space that just physically shouldn't exist.
But here is the million-dollar question. What happens when a drawing of a coastline reaches dimension 2.0? Mathematically speaking, a dimension of 2.0 means a one-dimensional line has wiggled and branched so infinitely that it completely fills a two-dimensional plane. It is no longer a boundary at all. It becomes a surface. At exactly 2.0, the whole concept of representation just totally collapses. Think about it. A map that is infinitely detailed requires infinite space to exist. So the map inside Voss's shop literally becomes the territory. It folds reality itself. The physical space inside the shop expands beyond its Euclidean borders. A building inspector measures the room as normal, but the people inside experience a vast, infinite dimension opening up right in front of them.
And this is where the hidden Gnostic philosophy of the story really shines through. You've got this ancient concept of the Pleroma, the infinite divine fullness of the universe, which was supposedly compressed and trapped into our limited physical world. Voss realizes that fractal roughness is exactly this. Every crack, every coastline, every rough edge is the infinite divine Pleroma finally leaking back through our compressed, smoothly limited reality.
Which leaves us staring into literal fractal void. The coastline paradox isn't just some neat math trick. It is a profound statement about the very nature of our universe. The closer you look, the more world there is to see. So the next time you're out walking and you look at a map, or a jagged rock, or even just a cracked sidewalk, ask yourself, are you comfortably living in the smooth illusion, or are you finally ready to measure the rough, infinite truth? Think about that, and keep looking closer.